In 1887, after celebrating 5 years of a Britain-free country, two men were mucking around in Woodbury Creek in Gloucester County when they found something buried deep. While they recognized what it was, certainly a familiar shape, no one had seen one quite this big before. They described it as a large thigh bone. However, it was too large to have come from any animal then known to science. While they didn't know it at the time, what they had found was not the first, and not officially recorded as such, but, based on its description, likely among the first dinosaur bones discovered in the modern period. And it would not be the last. This is the story about the Hadrosaurus and its friends in the Newark fossil superfield. Dinosaurs. Welcome to Words and Coffee, where we discuss interesting history about the Garden State and enjoy a cup of small batch roasted goodness. Today is Eclipse, a dark roast by Catfight Coffee Company, located in Newark, New Jersey. Got a maze on the back. And the history is Dinosaurs of New Jersey. Let's get to it. To elaborate for just a moment on that story from the intro, the two men were named Caspar Wister, a physician, and Timothy Matlick, a brewer and beer bottler from Philadelphia. But his day job was with the Second Continental Congress. He's the guy who wrote the Declaration of Independence. But wait, Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence. I know, hypothetical commenter, but Kinko's had yet to be invented, and the document itself had to be written by someone, and that someone was Mr. Matlack, who was known for his impeccable penmanship. What they dug up is suspected to be the first specimen of the Hadrosaurus, which wouldn't be named such until about 80 years later, when it was officially discovered. In 1838, John Estef Hopkins was digging for marl, a type of fertilizer, in a sandpit in Haddonfield, New Jersey, when he found what were later determined to be pieces of vertebrae, or maybe shoulder blades, it's unclear. But Hopkins just thought they were neat, and so put them on his mantle. Not knowing anything else about them, he allowed guests to take some, and it's suspected that a few ended up as window props and doorstops, and in one case, an umbrella stand. It wasn't until 20 years later, in 1858, that a Philadelphia lawyer named William Folk happened to be visiting town for unrelated reasons. He heard about these odd decorations and so visited Hopkins' farm. Upon seeing them, he realized that these were more than just curiosities. See, Mr. Folk also was a member of the Academy of Natural Sciences, and as one of his many side gigs, sponsored scientific expeditions along with fellow member Joseph Leidy. That fall, they hired a team of diggers to reopen the marl pits. What they would eventually uncover, 10 feet below the surface, was the first nearly complete dinosaur skeleton in the world, Hadrosaurus folki, named for both William Folk and the town it was discovered in. While Folk would unfortunately not long outlive this honor, dying just 7 years later at the ripe old age of 49, his dino discovery would prove to be just the first of many. Now, we can't talk about dinosaurs without at least mentioning something called the Bone Wars, a story in which Jersey actually plays an integral part. Othniel Marsh and Edward Drinker Cope, which frankly sounds a bit like coping drinker, were one-time friends turned rivals and responsible for unearthing over 100 different species of dinosaur in the mid-19th century, but also probably destroying a few dozen in the process as well. Originally meeting in Germany in 1863, Cope and Marsh studied natural history together and shared an enthusiasm for excavation. And for several years, their relationship was friendly and even supportive. They named discoveries after each other. But the friendship began to fall apart in the late 1860s. Joseph Leidy, who had broken ground at the Haddonfield site with Folk, was a fellow member at the Academy of Natural Sciences, as was Coping Drinker, whom he invited to the new site. This led to the discovery of several new fossils throughout South Jersey, including Haddonfield, Sewell, and Mannington. It wasn't long before Cope invited his friend and colleague Othniel Marsh to visit some of the digs. Marsh responded to this act of good faith with treachery. He went behind Cope's back and made a deal with the quarry owner to have any new specimens sent directly to his office at Yale. Cope would later describe this brontosaurus-sized dick move as the beginning of the end of their friendship, and things only deteriorated from there. The two would go on to engage in a years-long feud. They would try to beat each other to the punch on new discoveries, steal research and publishing papers ahead of one another. Marsh would also use his connections to deny Cope access to vital resources and institutional support, with some reports suggesting that there was even deliberate sabotage at a number of dig sites. The public feud grew so bad that eventually Cope's wife left him, and at his lowest point, he was in an apartment by himself with nothing but his fossil collection. When Marsh tried to take that, it was the last straw. Cope went public with his records, exposing Marsh's corruption and eventually causing Marsh to lose both his prestige and political support. Despite having made vital contributions to the field of paleontology, the feud irrevocably tarred both men's reputations, and they died near penniless. And it all started in Jersey. As for the original Haddonfield discovery, it's hard to overstate just how big of a deal this was. A nearly complete skeleton. It finally enabled anatomists to examine bone lengths and proportions and deduced that the stuff of Jurassic Park fame actually walked upright. Or could. Prior to that, we kind of knew dinosaurs existed, but there was some debate over whether they lumbered like giant cows or were more agile like birds. Because, surprisingly, there's actually quite a bit that can be determined from seemingly limited information. And when I say limited, I mean like 35 pieces. But, with inflation, that's totally like a full complete skeleton. And the limbs were arguably the important part for determining how they walked and informed how the skeleton would be assembled, so the original Hadrosaurus was mounted upright by artist Benjamin Waterhouse Hawkins, who was like the guy for dinosaur statues at the time. Hey, the man found his niche. His version of the Hadrosaurus currently resides at the Philadelphia Academy of Natural Sciences. She was the first official discovery, but as I mentioned, would not be the last. And the reason for that is because New Jersey sits right in the middle of the Newark Superfield, a giant cluster of fossils which stretches from Boston to Washington. Does this map happen to overlay the most densely inhabited area of the country at the time? Why, yes. Yes, it does. Archaeologists, paleontologist friends, feel free to jump in here, but it turns out that finding things buried underground is hard. And many fossils are found accidentally. But they're happy accidents. Unless you're a construction foreman and now you have to tell your managers that the schedule is going to slip for a month because some college kids need to muck around the job site. In 1866, another skeleton, what was later named a Dryptosaurus, was found in Barnesboro, another marl pit owned by the West Jersey Marl Company. Yes, before the North-South divide, we were still talking about Jersey in the West-East divide, and so-called Central Jersey still didn't exist. Before their falling out, Marsh named a Mosasaurus skeleton, found in Jersey, after Cope. In 1865, Joseph Leidy, remember him, found a tooth in Mulca Hill belonging to Diplotomodon horrificus. Nailed it. A mastodon skeleton was found in Mannington Township and given to the Rutgers Museum. Samuel Lockwood discovered bones along the Raritan Bay. John Eierman discovered fossil footprints near Milford in Hunterdon County. Lewis Woolman, in 1896, discovered a 15-inch long fossil foot bone in Merchantville during excavations for a railroad. In 1929, dinosaur footprints were discovered in the Hampton Cutter Clay Works Pit at Woodbridge. 1946, a major fossils fish find occurred in Princeton, which included hundreds of fossil coelacanths. During the 1902 construction of a dam in Boonton, New Jersey, work was suspended for several weeks after fish fossils were discovered in the rock, an event that was unfortunately overshadowed by several high-profile accidents that occurred during construction. As recently as 2014, a cache of fossils was discovered at a quarry in Mantua Township, now owned by Rowan University and renamed Fossil Park. And the list goes on and on, proving that even New Jersey, whose track record on historical preservation is spotty at best, can still do right every once in a while. In 1984, an Eagle Scout named Christopher Breeze arranged for a statue to be erected in Haddonfield near the site of the original discovery. And in 1991, the Hadrosaurus became the official state dinosaur of the Garden State, among only 16 states that have one. Beginning with the suspected and quite accidental discovery back in Revolutionary War times, New Jersey has played host to more than its share of dino developments. Say what you will about urbanization and mass construction, but those projects have unearthed some significant finds that might otherwise have never been discovered. Whether it's a guy just digging in his own backyard, a pair of friends turned rivals, or a construction worker who just realized that the schedule is about to slip 6 to 8 weeks, New Jersey will surely continue to be home to untold secrets yet to be discovered, though in some cases, this presents something of a professional hazard.
We got a real problem. You know that thing we took care of upstate?
Paulie was just talking about
We
that.
gotta get it out of there.
What?
Yeah, we gotta get it out of there. They just sold the property and they want to make it into condominiums.
Oh. Hey, Henry, hurry up, will you? My mother's gonna make some fried peppers and sausage for us.
Oh, hey, Henry, here's an arm.
Very funny, guys.
Here's a leg.
There's a wing.
That'll about do it for me. If you stuck with me this long, thank you so much for watching. Sources in the description as always. This has been Words and Coffee. Until next time.
Oh,